if you were to remove the ice, is what you'd find. So somehow someone knew that beneath all the ice is two land masses. If you heard about plate tectonics, where this is when those things would have broken up. There's no reason for those to be cracked like they are, but at the time of Noah's flood, they would have broken up and shifted around and done major damage. It's a lot more than just a big rainstorm. The fall was a universal fall. Adam's fall was something that created destruction and damage. Stars exploding and galaxies colliding. I'm that kid that every Christmas I would read Dune all the way through. I discovered there was a map that was discovered in the 1400s. It's a map of the world that had a lot of ancient known technology. That out-of-place artifacts is one of the themes of the book. Antikythera mechanism, clocks that shouldn't be possible back then. There has been, prior to this book, what's called the Family Wars.
It's related to fallen angels.
Like you were talking about traits earlier, they just so happen to be people that had this genetic trait of being maybe giant, but it wasn't anything related to
the term in the Bible would be Nephilim. It turns out they're not human after all. They're taking on human form, involved in covert activities, and infiltrating and discovering that the Semians are doing horrible experiments on people, trying to create a new strain of humanity.
What do you think about the Book of Enoch, first of all?
Showing the paths of the planets and kind of celestial mechanics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he's gone for a few weeks. When he comes back, 20 years have passed. The author of the Book of Enoch understood either relativity, which would make sense, or it was just a great plot device.
I know that in the Days of Lamech, you were describing how there were some floating islands.
There's a fossilized fish as at the end of his fins, wrists, and fingers.
Now, what's the science behind that besides the fish? Is there anything else that's supporting that could have been? Hi, I'm Mindy.
And I'm Elijah.
And this is Inklet Press.
We press into the ink together.
Today we're here with Jon Saboe, and he is the author of the Days of Lamech and the Days of Peleg. But today we're going to focus on your second book, but it's the story before the Days of Peleg, the Days of Lamech.
So thank you so much. And Days of Lamech takes place prior to the flood, the antediluvian flood, which is it's a story found in every ancient culture, something that has plenty of evidence for, and this is a time when if you heard about plate tectonics, this is when those things would have broken up. There's no reason for those to be cracked like they are, but at the time of Noah's flood, they would have broken up and shifted around and done major damage. It's a lot more than just a big rainstorm. This is a huge event, and we get catastrophic plate tectonics, in which the standard plate tectonics is the stuff that kids see when they look at a map and see how South America fits into Africa.
Before we get into the science behind the book, I wanted to ask you something. This is maybe not even on the topic.
Okay.
What's the weirdest thing you believe might be true, even though you can't prove it?
The weirdest thing that might be true,
Yeah.
even though I can't prove it. I'll get some dead air here. I'm going to try to. I don't deal a lot with total crazy hypotheticals. However, right now the idea of life on other planets is a popular thought.
Life on the what?
Other planets.
Okay.
And of course, there's no restriction on what God might do elsewhere in the universe. The only actual restriction is that human beings are made in the image of God. And yes, angels have certain aspects like free will, but being made in the image of God is totally uniquely human, and that is free will plus being indwelt by God's Spirit, and things that could never be shared by another race or another alien species of any sort. The type of sentiency and made in God's image is unique, and the proof of that is God himself took on human form, and he still has it today. So there's no way he can, I mean, he can't die for Martians, okay? And the fall was a universal fall. Adam's fall was something that took out the universe. It created destruction and damage, stars exploding and galaxies colliding. It's a very damaging thing, and of course the rebuilt universe, the new heavens and new earth will have all those things repaired.
Wow.
And of course we have a God who is still and will forever, in his servitude, in his manner, will still be, in his condescension, will be fully human. So there's no place for other sentient life in that form.
What's sentient?
Sentient means thinking, free will, in the mind of God. If there's trees and puppies and other things, dinosaurs, other planets, that's great. But you're not going to have. I just donkey puppies. You're just not going to have Star Wars type aliens where the gap between animal and human is a huge gap.
Wasn't it Spielberg that just said something about the latest science fiction movie about aliens that it's gonna mess up Christians or something?
It probably would if that was the case. Yeah, it'd be equivalent of finding the body of Christ in a crypt someplace.
Yeah, but I mean, for him to say that is a little bit, I don't know.
Well,
it's a little hot-headed, I guess.
Well, people say that because they're kind of gleeful at the opportunity. They say, that would be sure cool if we could mess up those Christians.
But they don't realize it won't mess up Christians, because we know that our God is bigger than that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, nothing's going to mess that up. It's not going to undermine.
Silly, actually.
It's not going to undermine the gospel or salvation or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a hopeful thing when they say things like that. So, okay, was that your rabbit hole question, I guess?
I guess I had a question. Like, what inspired you to write this book? Like, tell us a little bit about your inspiration into science fiction and specifically this topic in particular.
Well, I grew up with science fiction. I mean, I'm that kid that every Christmas I would read Dune all the way through, once a year. So the world building in that. I'm a big fan of Samuel Delaney. Again, it's a science fiction style where you're dropped into a world you don't recognize, and there's no clues as to what's going on. You have to slowly figure it out for yourself, like if you were dropped in the middle of Beijing or something like that, just trying to learn your way through it. The science fiction aspect is I like technology. I think it's amazing what it can do. There's limitations, obviously, and real briefly, the first book was I discovered there was a map that was discovered in the 1400s. It's a map of the world, and this map has Antarctica on it. It's called Bausch map.
Can you send that to us?
Oh yeah, I'll send you a copy of that. It's called the Bausch map, and it has Antarctica on it in the right place. The difference is it shows Antarctica as two small continents, which, if you were to remove the ice, is what you'd find. So somehow someone knew that beneath all the ice is two land masses. And of course, no one could possibly know that in the 1400s. What's interesting is that the projection or the angles of this map match up with ancient Egyptians' incorrect topography of the globe.
The incorrect.
Yeah, so
they thought it was incorrect, but it actually is correct.
Well, Egyptian projections are off by a certain percentage. Because Euclid measured the size of the Earth, and everybody in the ancient world knew the Earth was round. No one was flat Earth back then. But in their projections, try to put maps. It's very difficult to put a map on. Flat maps always have, like Greenland looks like a giant continent when it's not. And so the projections were consistent with what the Egyptians thought they should be. So it's a very ancient map that's been copied. And so, to make that story very short, I said I'm going to come up with a short story to explain that map. And so that short story was
turned into a
giant, crazy book. But the idea was, at some point, the Bible says in the days of Peleg, the world was And the King James says divided.
Yeah.
But the word divided can mean the people were divided, like they were scattered, and of course that time frame of Peleg. I mean, if you crunch the timeline, the Tower of Babel happens when Peleg is 4 years old. So there's a division there, but it could also mean charted, like mapped out cartographically. And so I just had this little picture in my head. At some point, Peleg is older. The different language centers are building up. You have Egypt, you have Sumer, you have the Minoans, and they're starting to establish, of course, even the Chinese. As people are migrating around the world, and someone said, "Let's go out and see this new world. What happened? How has it changed since the flood?"
What was it like? Yeah.
And so to find out, so it's basically a voyage around the world to try to figure out what's going on, and I incorporated
You didn't want to call it Around the World in 525 days?
No, I like the phrase the Days of Peleg because it's from the actual Bible verse, the Days of Peleg. And so the idea was in their travels they found themselves going through this landmass between the two land masses that was Antarctica as it was starting to cover with snow and ice.
So like that's
before the first
so
ice
the book
age.
that you wrote after this one, you wrote that one first,
Right.
but it's the story before.
It's
the prequel. The prequel.
Yeah.
No, the sequel.
Yeah. So
You wrote the sequel first before the prequel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because prequels come before.
But the Days of Lamech though.
Right.
Comes before it though.
Yeah.
Chronologically.
I'm just answering that question quickly because that had a lot of ancient known technology. That outer place artifacts is one of the themes of the book. Antikytherian mechanism, clocks that shouldn't be possible back then. And so with that in mind, then the Days of Lamech says I'm going to try to do something that involves the technologies that could have been possible.
Yeah.
Given long lifespans and given the nature of the planet at that time. And the antediluvian world is one in which oxygen rates or ratios were much higher, magnetism was much stronger, days were a little bit longer,
A little.
like stretched out. One of the results of the flood.
Our days were longer,
especially
especially with this weather.
Well, there's a strange reason is that in the ancient Sumerians, which the technology they had is the knowledge of the antediluvian technology, and they assumed 360-day years. But somehow, in that catastrophe of the Noah's flood, the subduction of continental shelves, and all the crazy things that went on, it caused the planet. Remember, the Bible says that after that, seasons happened. So you have a tipping of the earth to create what we now have seasons, and something caused the if it spins a little faster.
Wait, I do want to get into that.
Okay, we will.
But can you, for those who maybe don't know the plot of Days of Lamech,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say real quick about a little bit about the characters. Like Lamech, he begins as a reckless young man, and then he evolves into a leader. Why was that a character arc important for you? And while explaining that, could you explain a little bit about the plot of the book?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So Lamech is someone who, he's the son of the city's founder. He's very rich. He's an adrenaline junkie. But the premise of the book is that there has been, prior to the book, what's called the family wars. There was a point in time where people were just killing each other because my family's better than your family. And you can imagine, there weren't races per se at that point. There's not enough variety to develop that, genetically, but there would have been traits. And so family wars, they're just destruction. And as those were happening, a strange group of people just show up and start visiting the major cities. And in the book they're called the Semyas, which is a term from the book of Enoch. And they come in and they just preach brotherhood and unity, and they start presenting technologies that can help. And they unify, and so they've been pretty well established as, you know, helping bring in civilization. And so our character Lamech is one of a movement of young people that are kind of opposed to the Semyaz, because they see the Semyaz, yeah, they did great things, but they're also restricting, they're also kidnapping, they're also doing some underhanded things that. So he's involved. He pulls off a stunt at the beginning of the book to try to get attention. It's, you know, it's a guerrilla marketing, and he pulls off this stunt. But he's, like I say, he's an adrenaline junkie. But he gets contacted, we'll say, by someone who disappeared many years earlier, and this person is actively involved in fighting the Semyaz. And so he says, if you're tired of just goofing off and pretending, doing symbolic things to fight the Semyaz, how about you join the real resistance? And so he finds himself involved in covert activities and infiltrating and discovering that the Semyaz are doing horrible, horrible experiments on people, trying to create a new strain of humanity.
And then you kind of said before, when we were talking before, that when they're trying these things on humanity, that it's related to fallen angels or something like that.
Well, yeah, the term in the Bible would be Nephilim. It turns out they're not human after all. They're taking on human form, and of course, in the gospel we have an understanding that Jesus Christ is able to represent humanity to the Father because he's 100% human. And his 100% human, perfect blood is what redeems us. And one of the reasons that the Nephilim were so involved in trying to create offspring in the Bible is one of their motives was to try to create a strain of humanity that they could claim to be their own. And if they succeeded, when the Messiah eventually did show up, they could point to the Messiah and say, his DNA is part us. His DNA or his blood is part us, and you have to include us in this whole salvation process. And so they had to be wiped out. So in a science fiction vein, though, I chose, instead of trying to come up with some organic way of interbreeding, the Semyaz are in fact involved in trying to create a new strain of humanity.
Through science, right?
Through science, through interbreeding. It's nothing new. I mean, we saw people trying to create master races different times in the last century, either through experimentation or through eugenics. So it's a similar idea, except they were trying to create a breed of humanity, and of course evolution, if it worked, would require that a new system, a new process, a new trait is so much better that the old trait dies out. But it requires an extinction level event for every old version. So once their goal in the book is once they have their new breed, then they have to wipe out everybody else. And of course, the goal is then, well, the new breed is going to, at some point, if and when the Messiah shows up, they can point to that and say, we contributed to that. And we have a claim to salvation. And of course, that's one reason why they had to be all wiped out completely. And of course, the ones that were involved in that physically are in 2 Peter in Tartarus right now, in the abyss.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I jump around.
Can
I'm
we
sorry.
go down the Nephilim road? You have any Nephilim questions?
Not necessarily. I mean, I feel like you kind of answered every question that came up. So,
one question people often have is when the Israelites go into the Promised Land, they talk about seeing the Anukai or the sons of Enoch, and some of that's the same term. And people say, does that mean some of the Nephilim survived? And in fact, no, they didn't, because they had to be wiped out. But of course, that's a term. When they see the giants, they go, oh, that must be like the old Nephilim of old.
Oh.
So they get called that, but it doesn't mean that they're really related.
Wait,
So-
which giants? Sorry?
The giants that remember the Israelites said, we can't go into Jericho because there's giants there.
Oh, right.
And of course, you also have the sons of Enoch.
So you don't think they were giants?
I think they were giants, but they weren't related to this.
Oh, okay.
They weren't. They
Sorry,
weren't.
Elijah, what were you gonna say?
They were 100% human giants. Okay.
so it was more so something about maybe like you were talking about traits earlier, they just so happened to be people that had this genetic trait of being maybe giant, but it wasn't anything related to
Right.
the. Okay.
I mean, the variety of humans is very huge. You know, small, large, big, dark,
Yeah.
light.
Well, you did say that you took some of your material from the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
So, can you expound on that?
Some of the terms I did, the Mount Hermon is a place where they landed in the Book of Enoch, and they
Who landed?
the Semyas,
Okay,
the fallen angels.
What do you think about the Book of Enoch, first of all?
I enjoy it. There's various reasons why it's not in canon, because it's not written by Enoch. You know, number one, I mean, the Wisdom of Solomon was almost going to be in canon, and it's a beautiful book, and it's very, in my opinion, very, very anointed, but not written by Solomon. So there's 5 criteria for canonization, and it didn't make it.
But it was referenced, though, in the Bible.
It's referenced, yeah, which does not necessarily, I mean, Paul references other Greek philosophers too, and doesn't make them, you know, divine or inerrant. But yeah, the phrase streams of living water come out of Enoch, and Christ used that. So it's a
Wow.
great book. There's some very compelling things in it. One of the most compelling things in the Book of Enoch is that he's taken away into the heavens, not heaven, but into the universe, and he's shown the paths of the planets and, you know, kind of celestial mechanics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he's gone for like, you know, a few weeks. When he comes back, 20 years have passed.
Wow.
And so somehow the author of the Book of Enoch understood either relativity, which would make sense, or it was just a great plot device. It's
Well,
hard
like,
to
what
say.
if somebody were to go, like, in 50 years, go back and read Narnia? They're like, oh, they're time traveling for real, you know? But, like, it was a story, you know, for kids. So.
I mean, there's a lot of fun, compelling things there. There's some.
But you don't think the Book of Enoch is like that, like a novel, or?
Well, it's not divinely inspired. It does not have the status of
Yeah.
scripture.
Right. But outside of that, I
Yeah.
mean, is it like scientific, or is it like somebody was writing a novel, or?
It's hard to say, because, you know,
Yeah.
categories like novel didn't exist back then. That's a modern literary category. It's hard to say. I mean, the Odyssey, is that a novel? Is that a poem? You know, so it's hard to, you know, elaborate on that. It's see, there's so many midrashim, which is Jewish speculative history,
Yeah.
and I used some of that in the first book.
It's like inspiration.
Well,
Right.
it's more like if A and B is true, I bet C could be true. So, for example, in the Days of Peleg, I have interaction between Shem and Melchizedek.
Yes,
Okay,
I love
so
that.
so
That was- yeah.
the timelines matched. There's no reason, and in my mind, like, how would Job know about sacrificing unless Shem taught him? Because he didn't get it from Abraham. Because Job predates Abraham.
Who do you think Melchizedek was?
I think he was a person that discovered God on his own. I don't think it's a Christophany. That's my opinion. I think he's remember, the first Jew was Abraham, and Noah found God long before there were Jews. And the Jew is it's like, you know, Orthodox Jews like to pretend that Noah and other people were also Jewish, but
Jews, yeah.
you know, this Jew is a very special people of covenant, and so. Melchizedek is a powerful. He's a priest of the Most High God, but he's not a Levite, which makes him not eligible under the law. But since Melchizedek is referenced in the Psalms and then the details of that in the book of Hebrews to let us know that he existed for the purpose of giving us a model, as to show that you could be a priest without being under the law.
I guess on the topic of models and like things that exemplify, I've started reading the book, the one that came prior to this, The Days of Peleg, and I'm curious, did you put anything in here to kind of like direct people's attention to the gospel, or maybe have any like moral lessons in it, or was it like strictly just a science fiction?
It can be read as that. There, people who don't have a biblical background would probably not notice some of the things.
Okay.
In the days of Peleg, he's a skeptic, almost a cynic, and he runs into things that his worldview can't explain. He runs into Shem, and he runs into situations that, demonic activity, visions, things like that, that force him to realize that his worldview is incomplete. There is on one of the Orthodox Jewish readers of that book that we had a lot of conversations, and he just said he loved it because it lined up with so much of the Old Testament speculation and midrashim and adventure. And he says, but it has some strange Christian philosophy twist in it. And yes, the main character does get saved.
Got a little disappointed.
In a way, but it's the salvation. What is the criteria for salvation, though? Abraham believed.
Yeah.
And so, the underground church in the early Christianity had the little mark of the ichthus, or like we call it a fish thing, right? And I have an underground believers movement in the days of Peleg where they call it, because what's the gospel in the Old Testament?
Yeah, that's fine.
The gospel is the coming seed, because the seed of the woman is going to come and destroy the works of Satan. And so someday this seed is coming. So the believing in the coming seed is a criteria for, Abraham believed, and it was granted faith, granted righteousness based on that.
Interesting that you mentioned seed, because this is like a big thing now with some rabbit holes. That the seed of Satan, or the devil, or the serpent, was competing with the seed of Jesus, which I never really looked at it that way until kind of recently, that it was more like symbolic, where Jesus' foot is on the head of the serpent. It's like a symbolic thing where there's a spiritual thing that was won. But what about an actual seed that is trying to take over the seed of Jesus? Is that a real thing? Like, was it actual physical thing?
Well, the
happening,
phrase,
or was it just like a spiritual?
Well, the phrase
battle?
"seed of the woman," according to the older rabbis, like by that I mean rabbis pre-Jesus, was a messianic reference, because the seed of a woman, women don't have seed. That is a virgin birth verse right there. The seed of a woman is going to come and crush the offspring of the devil. So the offspring of the devil is the works of the devil. So there's maybe a little metaphor there. We know that the idea of seed, because God tells Abraham, in your seed, singular, is the salvation of the world. All the world will be blessed. And of course, that word is generic. It means offspring. But then Paul later on says, that's all true, but it also means an individual person. So the seed of the woman has to show up and crush the works of the Satan. So that's why in the book of Lamech, the Satan is busy trying to undermine that and claim.
We have some people speculating now that even up until today, that there's seed from the Nephilim or something, like in royalty, or I don't know, that's been passed down.
A lot of that stuff is mythological, because up until maybe as the Roman Empire started to die, prior to that, kings always claimed to be gods or demigods. And of course, if you go back far enough, you realize that lifespans after the flood dropped. And that was a major point in the first book. There was a point at which the average lifespan was maybe 300 and then 200.
Yeah.
And there was a point at which, and Peleg is in that category, it's in that timeline there, where the people of Peleg's day would never have known anybody that died of old age.
Wow.
But they're starting
only in your book, or in reality?
In reality, yeah.
You really believe that happened?
That's how it would have happened. And of course, historically, the average, as the life expectancies kept dropping, they dropped much farther. Or the life expectancy in Egypt at that time was in the 120, 130, at that same time, the life expectancy in summer was still in the 200s.
Yeah, so I was just curious, like, while writing this book, what are some major difficulties that you face?
The biggest difficulty in the second book was just sitting down and doing it. Just do it. I'm not a typical author that loves to write and write and write. The first book was motivated by that short story that just grew. The second one was actually a real desire, because the whole idea was ancient technology. And so the idea was, where can we find technology in the ancient world with, as we mentioned before, the nature of the planet itself prior to that. So I talked about Tesla, talked about different types of genetic engineering, and types of genetic engineering. And, yeah.
Teacher, I wanted to ask a question about your writing process too, because I do know you a little bit, and from hearing you in this podcast, that you do have a very scientific mind, and so you think of, the scientific side of things. But I'm an artist, I'm an author. I mean, not almost author, but I do like to write, and I like poetry, and there's an artistic side to it. And you said that you found it challenging to write. Do you think you found it challenging to write and tap into that artistic side?
No, because I'm a musician too, and I love variety. I mean, musically, I'm expressive there. No, just pure laziness.
Okay, well that's good honesty.
Time to sit down here and I'm just not gonna set a time for it.
Be on the same level with that.
The drive and excitement for the first book was just, I want to present this worldview. I took one inspiration from the book of Esther, and that one inspiration is this: the word God does not appear in that book. The word prayer doesn't appear in that book. There's nothing in that book about God, yet the whole book is about God. And so, the Days of Peleg, and it was just God's hand, God's providence as part of the story, and person has to look hard sometimes, but He's always there. And the second book I'm going to say the second book was more of a calling or a mission, a ministry. The first book was, I'm just going to have some fun and get this idea out there. Both of which was, I'm very big on presenting a biblical worldview. And the biblical worldview is very important, because outside of a biblical worldview is the worldview of reality and creation as it is. And so I'm a big Francis Schaeffer nut, and much of his material has always been, no matter who you are in this world, if your worldview is contrary to a biblical worldview, there's going to be gaps in your worldview. It's going to be situations that you can't explain, that don't fit, and the biblical worldview fills in those gaps. And so the main character in the first book filled in those gaps. In the second book, the main character for most of the book is not a believer. He doesn't want anything to do with this mystical stuff, but as a kind of a twist in the book, the fact he's not a believer is what makes him qualified for the mission he's given. Because the Semyaz can sniff out believers, and so since he is not one, he's able to get in where other people couldn't.
I guess I was gonna ask, what kind of feedback have you gotten about the second book? Given that it was more so a calling, like you said, I'm sure many people have read it and left reviews and their thoughts and opinions. And what are some interesting opinions and thoughts that you've come across?
Most reviews are positive. You can see reviews for both these books on Amazon. There's a few haters here and there, but for the most part, a lot of them were people who had read the first book. They were excited for a second book. There was a clamor for a second book. It's another reason that I went ahead and did it. There's a dedication to Peleg readers in the Lamech book. And people who read the first book, many of them said, I got to go read the real story in the Bible, which was exciting for me. The second book probably is a little more action-adventure, and maybe a little more linear, but at the same time, it it answers a lot of questions, like what happened to Enoch? You know, he was not. Well, that's clarified in the book.
Well, he just disappeared, right?
Well, kind of, sort of, yeah.
Can't give it away.
Well, I'm not going to give it away, but he and Elijah are unique in the Bible that they have not yet died. So.
You wanted so badly to get into that scientific technology side of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that in the Days of Lamech, you were describing how there were some floating islands.
Uh-huh. Well, the floating islands...
Could you explain that?
Yeah. There's a fossilized fish that's totally extinct called a tiktaalik. And it's a fish that is a small fish that it's not really a fish because it has blowholes on the top of its head, but it also has at the end of its fins wrists and fingers. It's a weird creature, and it's a creature that is only found in large coal beds. Now, a coal bed or coal deposit is the result of vegetation that's been crushed and collapsed, and with a proper understanding of the nature of the flood, creating layers and layers of mud and pressure, and creating things like coal and petroleum and things that we, hydrocarbons. The idea that this particular creature was designed to live on these giant islands. Now, a giant island, floating island of just debris, they exist temporarily in those communities that live on islands like that in South America, on Lake Titicaca. But the idea of continent-sized floating lands, which were part of the original creation, which were destroyed during the cataclysm of the flood and could not gather or develop at all because of storms and things like that today, would be the location for this creature, which would be perfect at living right in the bottom parts of the underside of the grass, and then be able to breathe through the grass in the top. So it's interesting design there.
Huh.
And so the islands are like that. They're floating islands, creates an interesting plot device because people could have headquarters on an island, but no one knows where they are. They're always moving.
Could they move it themselves?
Probably. Maybe they could. I didn't even think about that. But the fact that it's always floating.
Sail.
It's always floating. It's always moving. So you'd have to have sea legs to walk on the land. But it would just be gentle waves. But one of the plot devices is a method of transportation that can always find that island no matter where it is.
Now, what's the science behind that besides the fish? Is there anything else that's supporting that could have been?
The coal beds.
Okay.
The coal beds. I mean, this is huge, flat blankets of vegetation that have been compressed into
So
bare
they
coal.
were probably like an island,
Mhm.
and they were floating islands.
Floating vegetation, yeah, probably
Yeah.
5 or 6 feet thick. Trees would be on the top, not big trees, but they could go down a little bit.
What about any floating in the air? No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's only on Yes albums. Floating islands.
Actually, what was it like before the flood, would you say? What was it?
What we do know is that the
Atmosphere
oxygen
like?
content was much higher. Today it's
Okay.
about 20-some%. It would have been 30% or more.
And is that why people live longer?
Partially. We know that barometric therapy is used today, high oxygen content, to help heal faster.
Does it really work?
Oh yeah, people put it in barometric chambers and their wounds heal much faster.
Have you ever used it?
We use it today. Often.
You?
I've never used it.
Oh.
No. But the high oxygen content is part of that. High oxygen content, many creatures on the world don't stop growing. Reptiles don't stop growing. Many insects don't stop growing. And so with a larger concentration of oxygen, they could live longer, and if they live longer, they would die much larger, giving us larger reptiles. There's fossils of many types of animals. There's like giant penguins, there's giant pandas, there's giant crocodiles.
Giant pandas?
Giant, yeah, different.
As if they weren't big enough.
They're just cute right now. So
Would they
and
still
of
be
course,
cute is
and
the
of course,
question.
giant people too.
Mm.
So, much of the Peleg book was some research on Neanderthal skulls, which, number one, when Neanderthal skulls were found, they were deliberately displayed with the lower jaw jutting out incorrectly, but makes them look more brutish, right?
Yeah.
And so when they're correctly
I remember that
assembled,
in the book. Yeah.
correctly assembled, and it turns out that some of them, were just, they have huge brows because they're eating really tough meat, and as you chew, it presses this down here. So a lot of things from that. Another very interesting, if I can just jump into one other category here,
Yeah.
and that's the Ebola virus. How's that for a segue?
That is right.
The
I didn't
Ebola
expect that
virus
Yeah.
is
That's the
very,
scariest
very
one to me.
strange. Yeah, it is. It's one of the
Oh.
deadliest ones.
The
The
ones
only
that come
reason
here.
only reason it doesn't, for a virus to be effective, it has to not kill. If a virus has a 100% kill rate, then there's no one to spread it. That's one reason Ebola doesn't spread very well, because it kills too many at one time. It's horrible, horrible. But a strange thing
So
about
basically, there's no one to spread it because they're dead.
yeah, if it kills people too soon, that's one reason why COVID was so wicked, is because it had a 2-week incubation period by design. We're not going to go there. Anyway, but that's the reason I said that. Is that a very strange thing about the Ebola virus is that it's no different from your average everyday endosperm you find in the garden, except it has these two little called plasmid rings. And these plasmid rings they look artificial. And in the Days of Lamech, I have a reason for that, because it was designed to be a killer, try to wipe out the human race, to bring about the purpose we mentioned earlier. But these two plasmid rings, they're little tiny rings of self-replicating DNA. They look like they've been artificially inserted into a regular everyday endosperm. They're way less complex than the simplest virus. And so the idea that that is a deliberately man-made genetic anomaly that's been put into there is something that I explained.
Yeah.
The Days of Lamech.
How was it finding that balance, being creative, but also finding these scientific things, going through a lot of research? Was it difficult to straddle those two things?
The writing method I had for the second book was I always had a goal. I said, somehow, somewhere, the character's going to end up in this room or with this discovery. And so it would develop along that way. So there is a point in the Semiots laboratories where the Semiots have to use humans to do all the dirty work. And this guy, he's busy analyzing the data from all the experiments that's going on. And of course, the discovery of DNA was simply a realization that information from one subject was being transferred to another subject, even though the intermediary is dead. Because DNA is still there, and so so the fact it's just not crude, very advanced, complex, but just instructions. Instructions is in the DNA. I forget when, I think it's in the 70s, there was a mathematician called Zipf, Z-I-P-F, and he was working on code breaking. Zipf. And it's called the Zipf theorem. That sounds like it. Here's Zipf, I don't remember. But he was working on code breaking, and he developed a system that you could take any language, any code, any cipher, anything, and apply this theorem to it, and you could determine, yes, this has information in it, or no, this is random nonsense. Now, this Zipf theorem can be used to determine, it doesn't tell you what the information is, it's not a decoder of any sort, it just simply says there's instructions in here. And of course, if you're dealing with random noise that's coming through some sort of intelligence information system, and you say, well, I'm going to apply this theorem, and it creates hierarchies in the signals, whether it's letters or numbers or symbols, whatever. And you can do that and say, nope, this is pure nonsense, that's just noise. And you can dismiss it. No, this has information in it. Now it's time to start cracking the code. And of course, this is applied to DNA, proving that there is instructional information in that.
Yeah.
And of course, in the last 50 years, people have been trying to determine the information that's in there, and always getting more and more blown away at the complexity that's there.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can look at it and say, I have no idea what it says, but it's saying something, is a very impressive observation. And one of the characters in the book starts to develop that idea, and he's again, they're trying to create some sort of a superhuman, which of course is nothing new for the 20th century, right?
Yeah. Well, John, I mean, this is a loaded book, and there's so many different things that maybe you could say you even specialize in, that you have expounded on in this book. I mean, it's more than science fiction. It was your passion to write a science fiction book, but then there's all these avenues of so many different interesting things that we can learn about ourselves and about history and about science in your book. And also the book has a story, and isn't there there's a love story too, right?
Yeah, well, there's a couple, because there's in this book there's additional generations, but
Yeah, and then there's these deep veins of family and the beginning families from where we came from. So I would just recommend to anyone that has not read this book yet to read it. Please read it. It's fascinating.
Where's the book available?
It's on Amazon. However, I have some QR codes that are going to be associated along with this in the links here.
Yeah.
That you can get them directly from the publisher, a little cheaper.
Okay.
So there'll be links for that.
We'll put it somewhere here. Somewhere here.
So that'll
In
be
the
great.
link.
So,
Over
yeah,
here.
there'll be links there as well. So, yeah.
So we have a QR code here. I was curious, does this work?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll put that.
Quickly, perhaps scan this with your phone or whatever device you have
You
available.
can see that.
And otherwise, like you mentioned, we'll put it in the description, and then
Can
you
you
can
see
find
it?
it there.
It has a dinosaur on there, which means it was made with Google Chrome.
And let's try another angle.
We'll put it in there.
Well, yeah, we'll get it in.
They'll post it in there. They'll splice it in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, both books, because they've been a few years ago that I did them, but I think the structure was inspired by Dune, because I just read that all the
Love
time.
that.
So the
Love
idea of having each chapter has an opening statement that's either a quote from a historian or it's just a picture there that helps to try to develop the worldview a little bit more.
Well, at the beginning you said, I don't know if we got into this one, but that you started it as a small book, but then it just turned into really serious world building, right?
Yeah, the Days of Peleg there's a 14th century map that someone uncovered that actually is much more ancient than that, but it was found in the 14th century, that shows Antarctica, except it shows Antarctica as two separate continents, which is what it would look like if there were no ice. And so I said, I'm going to write a story that can fit into a biblical worldview to explain that map. That's how it started, and then it blew up. So.
Yeah, and you're going to give us that map so we can put it here somewhere. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, absolutely.
It's been a pleasure to have you.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
I hope these podcasts do well and continue on. It's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
We
By
hope
the
so,
way,
too.
do you think there might be a third?
Yes.
I've got an idea in my head, but I haven't had a
Okay.
chance to
How
sit down
about
and do
during
it.
the flood? During the flood.
Well, there's portions of Lamech that finish up during the flood too,
Okay.
Including
It's
what's
been a
actually
while since I read it, but yeah.
especially what's happening during geologically what happened during the flood.
Okay.
It's huge. It's a lot more than just a little rainstorm. The fountains of the deep, everything cracking open. Our modern plate tectonics happened then. That's when the crust cracked.
Wow.
Hmm.
And also the tilt of the earth. But
Oh,
We should
Yeah.
we should have a part 2 for
The
sure.
subduction,
Days of
okay.
Peleg. Days of Peleg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, John, it's
Thank you.
been a pleasure.
Okay.
And
Yes. Hey.
thank you for joining
Okay.
us.
Thank you.
Well, that's another episode. Thank you for joining us again and pressing into the ink with us. And we will see you guys next time.